On Sunday, we saw the Chargers take on the Seattle Seahawks in a game that they would lose 37 to 23. And as we do every single week, we're going to be going through the 5 things that we learned about the Chargers after their game against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, if that's something that you're going to enjoy, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go and get right into this. Now, the first thing that I want to cover here is going to be pertaining to the injuries and kind of what we might be looking at once this bye week ends following next week. So Keenan Allen, as we saw, played about a good half of the first half of the game and would not play the second half. But more than likely, because of this bye week and the rest of this week, he will hopefully be a full go when that next game in week 9 is going to be against the Falcons. Hopefully Keenan Allen will be a full go. We did see Mike Williams go down with injury, and it was listed that it will be a high ankle sprain, somewhere in the range of 3 to 6 weeks. So he could potentially be putting IR, which would allow you to raise somebody up to the active roster. But I kind of have a feeling that the Chargers, unless they already have, which I have not seen yet based on time of recording, I think they might try to leave him on active roster and try to ride it out and see if they can get him back on the team a little bit sooner, especially with a banged up wide receiver room. J.C. Jackson also went down with injury. Looks to be a knee dislocation or a patella dislocation, I think is what it's called, and he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. Hopefully there won't be any major surgeries needed to repair the kneecap or any tendons involved, but he's going to be out for the remainder of the season. But hopefully what this bye week can do, and that's something that we're going to be talking about here in a second here, is allow some of these players a chance to return or a chance to get healthy, including potentially Joey Bosa. I'm not sure where he sits in IR, how many weeks he's been on, but I think there's a chance that he could return in this next game against the Falcons. Now, let's actually go and get into the list. And the first thing I do want to cover here is going to be the fact that it is the perfect time for the Chargers to have their bye week. Now, the Chargers have not been able to close out some of these games, and especially the ones that I feel like we all kind of expected them to win. And even worse, they're under a huge shadow of crippling injuries. With so many players hurt and a team that needs kind of a push in this bye week, it couldn't have been placed at a better time for all of this to occur. With so many players being banged up or hurt, it allows for the team to heal a little bit and get closer to 100%. Whether that's Joey Bosa potentially playing in that week 9, Keenan Allen hopefully should be at full health for that next game. Justin Herbert, who was not listed on the injury report of last week, but hopefully he'll still be able to get fully healthy because I'm sure he's still dealing with some lingering issues. And for the most part, even the players that maybe weren't on the injury list, but just kind of banged up, it's going to allow them to get to 100% and get back on track to being healthy, which is going to allow you to enter these last 10 games in, back at 100% and fresh, and hopefully can lead to a good little burst of wins here towards the end of the year. But not only that, but with the trade deadline coming so close right on that bye week, is going to allow for the team, if they choose to, which I kind of think they should, and there will be a video on that, trade deadline targets for the Chargers, is going to allow for this team to potentially bring someone in and let them sit in the scheme, learn the scheme, go through the playbook, and not be rushed onto the field, such as we just saw with Christian McCaffrey, who played in the 49ers game after just 2 days of being with the team. But hopefully, if the Chargers do make a move, whether it's free agent signing, trade, whatever it may be to acquire new players, it's going to allow, this bye week is going to allow for those players to learn and get used to the new teammates, the playbook, and just hopefully when they enter the field, allow them to be at fully prepared to actually help this team win these games. But most importantly, I think this bye week is at the great time because it's going to allow for the coaches to figure out what hasn't been working and work through some of the issues that they've had. They've been losing some tough games. They've been losing games that a lot of people expect them to win. They've been making some poor play calls here and there, and it's going to allow them to reconvene and figure things out, decide if they want to keep this coaching staff altogether, which it seems like is the most likely option, especially with Brandon Staley saying in an interview that he's happy Joe Lombardi is his coach for the offense. And it's just going to allow them to kind of work through some of their issues and hopefully get it all figured out. Now, if they are switching coaches, then the team's also going to be allowed an opportunity to learn the new system, learn the new plays, learn what the coach wants them to do because of that bye weeks, and give them a chance to go through some things more and, get that new playbook, if there is a new one, worked through a little bit more instead of only adding a few plays here and there. And then you're not allowed such a diverse way of calling plays if they were to bring in a new coach. Now, I will say, and this is kind of important because, there is a lot of issues that these coaches are going to need to work through, but I think most importantly is the offense. Now, the defense definitely has struggled quite a bit, and we're going to talk about that here in a second here, but this offense needs to change a lot. They're not allowing Herbert to be Herbert. Some of their best players aren't even getting options to get open, and I think whether you keep Joe Lombardi, which I don't think you should. If I'm being brutally honest, I think Joe Lombardi should go. And defensively, I do like the defense coordinator, but it's being questionable. Maybe you could move him out. But I think Brandon Staley might be affecting that a little bit, and Brandon Staley might be altering calls. So, honestly, I do kind of like the defense coordinator, but I think Joe Lombardi needs to go. Do I think he will? Probably not, sadly. But I'm going to have a video on what the Chargers need to do to fix the offense. That should be up here in the next few days. We're going to be breaking down film and such. We're also going to have that film recaps video up in the next few days as well. But this bye week truly is a perfect time. Heal injuries, get the coaches figured out, and potentially bring in some new players. Now, the next topic here that I want to cover here is the fact that this offense seems to really have no mojo going for them. The team, it seems like the heart of this team, of the offense, is kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. Joe Lombardi kind of killed the offense, if we're being brutally honest. There is no real other way to say it. He is putting, receivers in the same location of the field. The same plays are getting called consistently. Everything's super predictable on the offense, and not only that, but he is not altering anything throughout the entire game. If something works, he keeps running it. If it doesn't work, he keeps running it. Things need to be changed, things need to be altered, and that's something that he's just not doing right now. And like I said, I kind of think it's time to move on from Joe Lombardi, but I truly don't think that they are going to. We saw something similar in his previous times. The only other time that he was an offensive coordinator and calling plays was with the Lions back in 2013, and guess what happened there? When he got fired, a lot of people were saying he got fired because he wasn't changing anything and the offense was stale, and everyone was calling out Matthew Stafford for starting to regress. What are we seeing right now? Justin Herbert is starting to regress, as people are saying. And look, Matthew Stafford's doing great now. He was doing great after Joe Lombardi left, so I think if you move Joe Lombardi out, Justin Herbert's going to get back on track and start performing at such a high level that we know that he can. Now, the play calling just isn't good. Routes are ending at the same location. Like I said, I'm having a whole video on this, but players aren't being used right. Austin Eckler, I feel like he's not even going out on real routes. Every single time he's just in the flats waiting for a pass, and he's forced the ball because no one is open downfield because they're ending in the same route, or they're all just curl routes. Constantly curl routes all the time. It's just, and not only that, but it feels like personnel isn't even right a lot of times. On fourth and whatever it was, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, early in this game, in the first quarter, the Chargers want to go for it on the Seahawks side of the field. Perfectly fine with that. But what do? When the middle is stacked up, stacked up, they run right down the middle. They don't do an outside run. They don't do a pitch. They run it straight down the gut with Austin Eckler without a fullback in there to help him block. It's just a bad play call. It's just bad play call. The wrong personnel out there. I think you pull a tight end or pull a receiver, motion a tight end in to confuse the defense a little bit, shove it down. I just don't. And you can tell right now by how I'm talking. It is very frustrating. And you're going to notice that when that next video comes out. But there's just a lot of things that aren't working. Justin Herbert looks lost and shaken up. He looks like he's not even confident in himself anymore, which was one of the best things about Herbert. He would make a mistake, he'd throw an interception, and the very next time he would throw the same type of play, 50 yards down the field, and it would be a touchdown. Herbert had that confidence. Seems like this year he hasn't quite had that. Now his injury is definitely still lingering a little bit, but I think Joe Lombardi is ruining his confidence more than that injury is limiting his play. Lombardi is just not it at all. And, I think it's just really starting to show. A lot of people thought having Joe Lombardi back-to-back years, the first time Herbert's had it in quite some time, I believe, since prior to Oregon, it's just, everyone thought that this was going to be the year because you get the same coordinator, you get to work together a little bit more, and I think more then likely it seemed like Joe Lombardi shrinked the playbook and limited what Herbert can actually do. It's really painful to watch. This team needs a fire on offense. They were top 5 last year in offensive production and yards and all this stuff. They were top 5. Now they're sitting below average. I mean, there's something rotting inside this offense, and you need to figure out what it is. Do you need to bring someone new in as a player? That could do enough. You need to just change the playbook. Joe Lombardi, I think, can be a good offense coordinator, but he needs to allow Herbert to be Herbert and just change the playbook a little bit more. Or do you need to just completely remove Joe Lombardi and bring someone new in? There's a lot of questions that can be asked there and not a lot of answers. Hopefully those answers will be resolved by week 9 and the remainder of the year can do great, but I think a lot of us fans are losing confidence in this offense and Joe Lombardi just as much as Justin Herbert is losing confidence in this offense and even in himself, I'm starting to think. Next thing I want to talk about here is the fact that the defense just can't keep expecting to win games when they go down by so much, especially in that first quarter. The Chargers continue to fall to early deficits in the first quarter, even in this game against the Seahawks. The Chargers fell down 17-0 this week. And no matter how great your team is, it's going to be hard to come back from such a deficit. And the worst part is this isn't anything new for this Chargers team. Chargers fell down 13-0 against the Jaguars. They lost that game 38-10. They also fell down 10-0 to the Broncos in the first quarter. They would luckily win that one 19-16, but if you remove those 10 points, or you at least kind of get close to matching that, that game's not in overtime. That game's not as close as it was if the defense can step up a little bit in the first half. Now, I will say, especially in the first quarter, I will say they have done a really good job at altering things, which is something that I think the offense struggles in, and slowing down people in that second half. But what is going on during the week where they can't figure out the game plan and it worked right away in the first half? It's like they plan, this is what it feels like as an outsider. It feels like they plan this perfect defense that will work, and they just don't use it until the second half because they want the offense to get cocky on their side. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Now, the defense has done a good job at altering things and working, and it did look like they were on a good start at the beginning of this game with that Kenneth Murray interception, but the team has a struggling offense. We've seen this time and time again. We just mentioned it 2 seconds ago. And because this team has a struggling offense, you really need to have your defense step up big right away, slow down the other team's offense, let your guys get some confidence, and then as the game goes on, if you let in a couple, it should be okay because your offense is going to be on pace too. But instead, what we're seeing is the offense starts really slow and they never get it up, and the defense starts even slower, but they do pick it up, but it's not enough to match where the offense is landing throughout the game. So it's really hard because the defense is doing a very solid job. They're just allowing too many points in that first half, first quarter. And if they could just find a middle ground, I would be happy. And if they could just play like they do in the second half at all times, I would be ecstatic. But they got to figure out something to do right now. Now, next topic I want to talk about here is still talking about the defense, and it's the fact that the run defense is just as bad as it was last year. And that's really saying something. Last year, the Chargers sat as one of the worst run defensive teams in the entire league. And somehow, even after bringing in Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, who were all great run stuffers last year and still seem to be this year, they're still below average in rushing yards. They've allowed multiple rushers to have over 100 yards against them. And I mentioned earlier, it's really confusing because I like what the defense coordinator is doing and what the defense entirely is doing, especially with, the late game alterations to slow down the opposing team's offense. But when you have so many impactful players and so many great players, and we'll say Joey Bosa's loss is definitely a big part of it. He was one of their best run stuffers last year, and he's no longer with the team. It definitely is part of it. But it's starting to become a question of, is this the players, is this the personnel, or is this coaching? Like, at some point, you have all of these great guys at stopping the run, and they're still getting yards. At some point, you do have to ask, is it the coordinator's fault? Is he putting the guys in the right spot to slow down the run? Is he overhauling one side and they call the run to the other side because they just see how overhauled on it? Is this on the players or is this on the coaches? And I'm not quite sure, but the run defense definitely is still a huge struggle. The Chargers allowed 168 yards to Kenneth Walker III this game. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 74-yard rushing touchdown. And this is like the 4th, maybe even 5th 50-plus yard rushing touchdown of the year for the Chargers. Painful to watch. I mean, the fact that at any point the run defense could just allow such a massive play it's just bad to think about. And not only that, but he averaged 7.3 yards per carry on 20-plus carries. I think it was right around 20. I think it was a little bit above 20. That is absolutely insane. Now, I brought up this statistic many of times. 3 yards per carry is right around average. 4 yards per carry is about good. And somewhere in that 4.5 to 5 range is like elite level. Even 4 and above is like elite level. And the Chargers allowed Kenneth Walker III, who, by the way, sits at 17th in the league right now, so below average of starters. They allowed him 7.3 yards per carry. Not only that, but if you took out 168 of those yards and averaged it out, the remainder of his yards, averaged it out against all the other people, he falls all the way down to like the 20s and 30s in the entire league. The only reason why he's actually up to 17th is because of the Chargers' run defense. So this run defense definitely needs to take a big step up. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is, it's time that we all be honest with ourselves as Chargers fans. The team is just not meeting the expectations that were set by the players, by the coaches, by us fans, by the press. Expectations are not being met by any means. They're getting out-coached in every single loss. The games they've lost, which 3 games that they've lost, are against Andy Reid, Pete Carroll, and Doug Peterson. All 3 of those coaches are coaches that have done a great job in the league, won games in the league, been in the league for a very long time. Just guys that know more than Staley, and they out-coach Staley. And every single team that the Chargers have beat are against first-time coaches or struggling coaches that haven't had enough years under their belt. Kevin Stefanski, not doing good in the Broncos. I think this is the first time he's ever been a head coach. Lovie Smith, I do like him as a coach, honestly, but he still doesn't have that many years to really work with. Josh McDaniels, I think this is the first time as a head coach. Nathaniel Hackett, again, a lot of guys here that really it's their first time. They either haven't been a head coach for a long time or they just don't have enough years under the belt. So it seems like pretty consistently, coaching almost has more to do than players on the field. I mean, it's kind of hard to see because no one really thought the Seahawks were going to be that good. No one definitely thought the Jaguars were going to be that good, but they have a good coach and they end up winning that game. Broncos, people thought were going to be good. Now, they obviously haven't been, but the fact of the matter is, when the Chargers go against a really high-level coach, they lose their games. It's kind of a little bit questionable and a little bit worrisome to think about. Now, injuries are getting the better of the Chargers on all aspects of the team. Seems like they're the most injured team in the entire league. I think that I could say that pretty confidently. Justin Herbert with a rib injury, Joshua Kelly, Keenan Allen with his hamstring, Mike Williams with his ankle, Joshua Palmer I think he just had a concussion, Jalen Guyton with his ACL, Donald Parham, I don't remember what happened to Donald Parham. It might have been a concussion. I'm not quite sure. Corey Linsley, illness, and a couple other lingering issues. Trey Pipkins went out. Rashawn Slater went out. Joey Bosa went out. Drew Tranquil went out for a little bit of time last game and another time. J.C. Jackson out for the rest of the season. Chris Rumph just went out this past game. Dustin Hopkins with a hamstring injury. I mean, that's a mouthful of names right there. That's a ton of names. Not only that, but all of those guys are starters or really relevant pieces. Wide receiver 1, 2, 3, and 4 have all been injured at some point this year. And Justin Herbert's expected to compete at a high level. I mean, that's absolutely insane. All of these injuries. And now, who do you blame it on? I'm not quite sure. I mean, some people want to say the turf, and it is questionable. But part of it might fall on the training staff. I'm not sure, but that's a lot of injuries to fight that uphill battle and still be a competitive team. Now, this team struggles a lot, and I hate to say it, but with the injuries, with the coaching, this team could fall out of the playoffs. Right now, they sit at 4-3 at 7th in the AFC, just barely in the playoffs, expected to go against the Chiefs if the playoffs were to start today. But with 10 games remaining, there's a whole list of things that could happen for this team. They could get healthy and win out the rest of the year and only lose 1 or 2 more games. They could completely collapse and only win 1 or 2 games. I mean, that's a huge difference there. Winning 1 or 2 games or only losing 1 or 2 games. Huge difference there. Now, they could also land in the middle right there. But in all reality, this team likely will land somewhere between about 11 wins and 9 wins. And that's just like in the middle. That's just average. That's not even high expectations. Because truly, I could see this team winning out entirely. But in reality, I think about 11 wins, 9 wins is about accurate. Currently, they sit 2 games back from the Chiefs in the top of the AFC West. Now, they will play the Chiefs in Week 11. So if they win that game, they only need the Chiefs to lose 1 more game than they lose. Through the remainder of the year. So if the Chiefs drop a game in Week 13, the Chargers win in Week 13. There you go. Chargers take AFC West spot number 1. But it's going to be a tough battle. The Chiefs team is very good. So it's likely that the Chargers are going to have an uphill battle to go through. Now, truly, I think 9 wins, you're not in the playoffs at this point. That's kind of what I think. Now, the Chargers only sit 1 above 500 at this current moment and are in the playoffs, so it's potential that they could at 9-8 and make it in, but there's a lot of people right there on their tail. At 10 wins, I think it's right on the bridge. I think you could go in or you might not go in, and it's going to be based on tiebreakers, on who wins what game, who wins the most in their division, all that sorts of stuff. So 10 wins is right on the edge. I think 11 wins is enough to win you the AFC West, and I think it's enough to definitely get you in the playoffs if you don't win the AFC West. So there's a bridge there where, just based on estimations and on averaging expectations and reality, there's a point where you make playoffs, you could or couldn't make playoffs, or you miss playoffs. And it's only a 3-win difference. That's definitely a big worry for a team that's already had some struggles. But, I don't know what to really expect from this team. In all reality, I think I had the team losing 5 games total, which means they would only lose 2 more through the rest of the year. I'm not quite sure if they're going to be able to attain that this year. I'm just not quite sure because they've been so up and down throughout the year. Now, if the coaching staff can get together, I know this team, even when banged up, can be a top-level team and is a contender. But it might be time to make a change, whether it be personnel, players, coaches, I'm not sure, but something needs to change for this Chargers team to reach their full potential, and this window could be closing pretty soon with Justin Herbert needing a contract if they don't find a way to win here in the next few years. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Chargers team is going to make a move at coaching, at players, at trade deadline? Do you think this team's going to make playoffs? Do you think they're going to miss playoffs? What are your expectations for this year? And, what are your thoughts on this Seahawks game? Because I kind of went on a tangent there, but what are your thoughts on this Seahawks game as well? If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. But as always, I hope it taught something today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. It's something really important to me. Affects someone else's day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if you all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired.